Hey, what's up guys and gals? My name is Rick Nineg. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about the Twilight Zone. More specifically about one of the most popular ever Twilight Zone episodes. It's called Eye of the Beholder. Now, I'm going to assume that you have watched this episode, so if you haven't, go ahead and check it out before you watch this video because there will be spoilers involved. So I'll give you a couple seconds. While I do that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It is a free way to support my channel, and I do appreciate to those who have done so and will do so. So let's get right to it. As I mentioned with the spoiler alert, this episode is super popular. Many people remember it, but what was the most difficult thing about filming this episode? Well, that is in hiding the faces of the doctors and nurses without limiting the camera movement while the episode was shot. Now, this is important because they got two men to work together to block every movement of camera and actor perfectly. It was almost like a ballet. They had to choreograph the movements where the actors stood, which way they looked, how their hands were, where they were positioned, how the lighting was. It was extremely important. Now, one of the men who worked on it, his name was Hayes, the other one, George Clemens. Hayes recalls that the trick to the episode was to keep the audience from seeing the actors for a great part of the story, yet they didn't want it to be obvious that they were using just hands, inserts, and hearing the dialogue. So these two guys evolved a very complicated camera movement by which they were able to see the doctors and nurses all the time, but they would be passing one another at exactly the right moment. Again, like a ballet, a choreographed type dance. And so the camera would be in a place where you couldn't see their faces, and they'd go behind a pillar just as they were turning toward the camera, and that would all be timed. It wasn't accidental. Now, it's not just the camera angles, but you have to think, what's the reason? What's the justification for them doing this? Well, that is that the bandaged up girl who's waiting to be unbandaged or unwrapped was under those bandages, and she couldn't see any of them, basically, any of the doctors or nurses. So we kind of take the place of her. We, the audience, are limited in the information that we knew. So we were getting her viewpoint under those bandages. There was one scene in particular that was crucial and very important, and it presented a big challenge. That is when the bandages were being removed from the character Janet Tyler's head. Now, while they were unwrapping her, they wanted to create an effect that her point of view was being seen, that you could see more light as the wrappings were unwrapped, and these layers of gauze and wrappings became less and less until little by little she was able to see the outlines and the shapes of the people and so forth. And that was hard to do. It's not as easy as it sounds. If you were trying to film this yourself, it would very much be a challenge. So they wanted to have something in front of the camera so that it would be her point of view, her point of reference. And that is one of the advantages that they had when they rehearsed before the cast and the crew, because they were able to choreograph all these things. So what did they do? They got a fishbowl, believe it or not. Yeah, just an ordinary fishbowl, and hung it in front of the camera, and they wrapped the fishbowl. So the idea was they would be shooting from inside the fishbowl, and when the bandages were unwrapped over the fishbowl, you saw the layer by layer beginning to get less and less, but you would see the outside kind of foggy appearance of the actors right in front of it. It was a really cool, simple camera trick that no one was the wiser how they did it. Now, we all know, or people that have studied classic TV shows and movies know, that they usually start out very early in the morning, and sometimes they have 16-hour days. Well, for this shoot, they worked until midnight or about 1 o'clock in the morning to finish this episode. I thought this was really interesting and cool to see how not only was this episode essentially a ballet, it was a choreographed movement, which, yes, is sometimes how they shoot different episodes and so forth, but it's a little more freeform. Here they had to block, they had to make sure that if an actor was right in front of the camera, the lighting had to be right behind to cast a shadow and so forth. That's not what usually happens on a TV show. This is a very interesting choreographed dance, almost like a painting that constantly moves. It's really a piece of art, this episode, if you haven't seen it, and it is so fantastic. And then the fact about the revelation using a fishbowl and having the camera inside and seeing that foggy kind of blurry appearance, I think is really, really cool. That lends a little bit more credibility to the idea that she did have that operation, and then when she's coming to the light, that she is getting better and better vision as the bandages are unwrapped. So let me know your thoughts down below. Have you seen this episode? Do you like it? And what do you think about these effects and ways that they filmed this episode? I think it's really cool, fantastic, and fun. So let me know your thoughts. As always, I love reading them, and we'll see y'all next time. And don't forget, everyone, be hopeful. Thank you to all my supporters, especially my Diamond tier patrons: Russ C, Sally N, Vito L, Citizen Kane 359, David D, Jerry D, Jennifer P, and Kevin K. If you want to join this list and be a patron supporter, it does help out so much, and I thank you ahead of time.